I got a lot of comments when I first made my big wheat farm that I should have added a water supply. I originally just did the farm because it looked nice, but then I realized this is a survival world. I need to add some water and make this like a real farm. So today, that's what we're doing, and I'm also going to read you some scary stories. The first story today is from r/no sleep from user the God Circuit. I'm a former black hat hacker. A dying billionaire hired me to find a circus performer last seen in 1922. Reed had attached a black and white photograph to his email. The photo showed an impossibly tall man with feathered wings standing on stage in a circus tent, surrounded by horrified onlookers. I checked the photo for signs of manipulation, but I didn't see any. The man had been shackled to a stage floor. He was so thin his ribcage pressed through his skin. This man vanished in 1922, Reed told me. I need help finding out what happened to him. Reed was a cloud data entrepreneur worth around $3 billion. In the news, I read that he'd recently been diagnosed with terminal liver cancer. I wondered if he was still in his right mind. I called the number in his signature. His secretary answered and then scheduled a meeting for me and Reed later that week. I met Reed at his office downtown. He sat at his desk but stood to shake my hand. He looked sick, thin and frail. He'd lost all his hair. His handshake was firm, though, and he still had his confidence. Salesman smile. The famous red Primara, he said. I just go by Vadim now. How'd they catch you? I've always wanted to know. The FBI hid a canary token inside a server I'd broken into. When I used the token, it leaked my IP address. Did the FBI know you were coming? I've always thought they did. So far, I haven't been able to figure out who tipped them off, though. My partner, Alexei, did 2 years in federal prison. I did 15. Now, I strictly do white hat work. Reed coughed into his handkerchief. Then he sat at his desk again and turned his computer monitor toward me. On the screen was an old newspaper article from the Bismarck Tribune, dated October 1922. The performer whose picture I sent you went by the name Shazikiel, Reed told me. He performed as part of a traveling circus called Marchetti's Palace of Wonders. The owner of the circus, Ignazio, claimed Shazikiel was one of the watchers from the Book of Eno. What's the Book of Eno? An old religious text that claims there was a group of angels who abandoned heaven to sleep with human women. The women who became pregnant gave birth to hideous giants called Nephilim. Reed scrolled through the newspaper article. It described the different performers: a sword swallower, a strong man, a fortune teller with milk-white eyes, and then Shazikiel, the angel, the same picture I'd seen before. Shazikiel was one of the circus star attraction, Reed told me. Stories about him spread all over the USA and eventually reached the ear of a railroad tycoon named Threll. Threll was obsessed with the occult. He was also a practicing hermeticist who sought to use the metaphysical world to control physical reality. He hired a Pinkerton detective to travel to North Dakota and find out if the stories about Shazikiel were true. The detective arrived in North Dakota but never made it back to Threll. The Pinkertons sent a few more detectives to North Dakota to look for this missing detective, but they couldn't find him. But they did learn that Shazikiel had disappeared too, and nobody ever found out what happened to them. That's where the story gets stranger. In the late 80s, this picture was posted to a BBS conspiracy board. It shows an angel lying on an operating table in some kind of medical lab. Reed opened the picture. The angel looked just like Shazikiel. His head was shaved, his wings have been mutilated, and his flesh was covered with surgical scars. I've seen things on the dark web that could put most people in therapy. Cartel executions, freak accidents, exploitation rings. I've learned to look at horror like data, separating the facts from the suffering. But this picture of Shazikiel made my stomach turn. The person who leaked this photo claimed they worked at Parallax, a genetics company founded by Threll's grandson. So, you think the Thrells have had Shazikiel locked up somewhere this whole time? Reed leaned across his desk. Threll's grandson was a heavy smoker. He was around my age when he was diagnosed with lung cancer. I have a few friends who know him. They say he managed to cure his cancer. They say he stopped aging, too. I knew it all sounded crazy. I knew Reed was probably out of his mind. Work had been slow, though, and Reed's contract was very generous. I told him I'd look into Parallax and see what I could find. For the next 3 days, I searched archived Reddit and 4chan threads, old forum sites like Godlike Productions and Lunatic Outpost, and Tor sites like Dread and Dark forums. On an archived alt.conspiracy Usenet chain, someone calling themselves Null Sequence claimed they were the one who'd first posted the Parallax Angel photo. Their email was nullsequence@netcom.com. I took a chance and tried to email the address. "Did you take this picture?" I asked, and I attached a copy of it. I'd nearly given up on them when, 2 weeks later, they wrote me back with an invite to join a Signal group chat group. I joined. "Who are you?" they asked. "My name's Vadim. I'm a private investigator. I've been hired to look into Parallax Angel's experiment. Send me a picture of your face with your driver's license beside it." I don't like to give strangers a copy of my ID cards, but I didn't have any other leads. I needed to know what they did. I could always get a new driver's license if I had to. I sent them the picture. An hour later, they called me. A woman spoke. "You're not working for Parallax, are you?" "Just for someone they've screwed over." "They've screwed over a lot of people." "How long ago did you work for them?" "I didn't. My father Jose did. He's Null Sequence. He worked at Parallax from 1986 until he was found dead in his apartment on June 5th, 1992. "How'd he die?" "The police said it was a heroin overdose, but he'd never touched heroin in his life. He hated drugs. He wouldn't even take Tylenol when he had a headache." "Did your father tell you anything about what Parallax was working on?" "They called it Project Nephilim. They were trying to sequence the angel's DNA. They thought this DNA held all kinds of secrets, and if they could map it, they'd unlock the truth about the universe." She paused. "My father had more pictures. He kept a journal, too. I could send you everything, but on one condition." "What's that?" "If you find proof that Parallax killed my father, you need to give it to me." I agreed. She sent me the photos and a text file containing her father's journal entries. In the new photos, Shazekiel's body had been even more mutilated. Wires had been embedded in his arms and chest. Plastic tubes sucked the blood from his veins, transferring it into test tubes. In a journal entry dated January 14th, 1992, Jose wrote, "I managed to get a camera into the basement of the New Mexico lab and take a few pictures. I don't know where Parallax found these surgeons. They can't speak English, just Italian. They took 6 vials of blood out of the angel and then sent them upstairs to Gideon, our ontological geneticist." Jose's final entry was dated June 2nd, 1992. In it, he wrote, "Gideon thinks Threll has lost his mind. Threll thinks the angel wants revenge. He wants to keep it chained up in the lab forever, or at least for as long as he's still alive." I called Reed and told him what I'd learned. "This is great work," he said. "Now we just need to get you into that lab building." "I'm working on it." "Work faster." Searching through New Mexico real estate listings, I learned the old Parallax lab building had been put up for sale by its new owner, a company called Ophedia Global. I called Reed and asked if he could get me a tour of the building. He called me back the next day and said the tour had already been scheduled. I got on a plane to New Mexico. During the flight, I had a strange dream. Shazekiel leaned over me, smiling in my face, while his wings flapped behind his back. I stared up at his hideous smile, frozen, unable to move, unable to scream. He ran his long, bony fingers over my face. "I'm waiting for you, Vadim," he said. I woke up as the plane landed, covered in sweat. I took a cab to my hotel. I spent the night looking through pictures of the old lab, trying to figure out where Threll might have had Shazekiel hidden. The next morning, I met the realtor, Katie, at the building. She looked like a typical suburban mom. Curly blonde hair, she wore a black blazer. She shook my hand and asked me how long I'd worked for Reed. "About 2 years," I said. "What's he planning to do in New Mexico?" "I really can't say anything. Reed wants to keep this project quiet." She said she understood, and then she brought me inside the Parallax lab. The first floor was filled with cubicle dividers. Gray carpet covered the floor, gray blinds covered the windows. "It's really a great building," she told me. "Lots of space, lots of potential." "The building's been empty ever since Parallax shut down?" "Yes, Ophedia Global acquired the building recently, but they haven't been able to find a buyer yet." "The building's been on the market a while, hasn't it?" "Unfortunately, there used to be some rumors going around that this building is haunted. She led me past the cubicles. The building is still in very good shape, though, she said. The owners send cleaners in every 2 weeks. They've kept the place in very good condition. Do you think I could see the basement? I'm not supposed to take people down there. Why not? The cleaners don't get to it as often. I'd really like to see it. Reed's going to need a space to set up his server racks. I guess I could show you it quickly. She brought me downstairs and flipped the light switch. Fluorescent tube lights lit up the concrete hallway. The furnace room is on your right, she told me. Then next to it is a storage room you might be able to use for servers or whatever other kind of equipment Reed needs to put in there. At the end of the hallway, I noticed a metal door. Where does that door go? I have no idea. I need to ask the Thrells. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. The handle felt strangely warm. I began to feel dizzy, and I knelt on the door. The room spun around me, and my vision blurred. For a moment, I saw Shazekiel sitting in a cage inside a circus tent. A man in a suit and a hat stood next to him. Ignazio keeps the keys underneath his pillow, Shazekiel said. He drank an entire bottle of rum tonight. Just reach under his pillow and take the keys. He won't wake up. And if I free you, you promise you'll come back to California with me? There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Shazekiel smiled, his lips stretching across his face. Katie put her hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I'm fine, sorry. I just lost my balance for a second. It's the air down here. It's very dusty. We should go back upstairs. I agreed. I followed her back upstairs. So what do you think? She asked me. The building has a lot of potential. I really need to talk to Mr. Reed first, though, before I can say anything else. Of course. As soon as you do, please let me know what he thinks. We shook hands and said goodbye to each other. Then I went back into the city and rented a van. I drove around and bought everything I'd need to get through that metal door. A bolt cutter, a flashlight, a 20-volt drill, and a big pack of tungsten carbide-tipped drill bits. I drove back to the lab at midnight. I shut off the building's alarm, got through the front entrance, and then made my way back down to the basement, where I started drilling out the metal door's keyway. The first drill bit lasted 4 minutes before it broke. I looked over my shoulder, unable to shake the feeling that somebody was watching me. I put in the second bit and kept drilling. Burning hot metal shavings sprayed across my hands, but I ignored the pain. The drill hit the security pins and kicked sideways, but I grabbed onto it and held it tighter. Sweat dripped down my face. Dull pain spread through my forearms. The second drill bit broke, and I put in the third. The third bit finally got the door open. Behind the door, concrete stairs led deeper underground. I looked over my shoulder again, and then I turned on my flashlight and followed the stairs down into the sub-basement. I came out into a lab filled with metal tables, overturned chairs, and computer monitors with shattered screens. Surgical instruments lay scattered across the floor. The counters were covered with broken syringes. In the next room, someone moaned. "Hello?" I yelled, but no answer. I walked through the lab into the adjacent room. An enormous shadow stretched across the back wall. I raised my flashlight. I nearly dropped it on the floor when I saw him. Shazekiel. His arms outstretched, his legs pressed together, as if he'd been crucified. I thought I had prepared myself to see him. I thought I'd be fine, but my brain struggled to process the fact that he was real, not just a photograph anymore. My legs buckled. The longer I looked at him, the more horrific the scene became. His body had been embedded into the wall. His hands, feet, and shoulders had been pinned to the wall with steel bolts. Thousands of wires entered every part of his body. Some were thin, others were thick cables. The wires connected his body to junction boxes mounted on the walls. What remained of his wings spread out behind him. Most of the feathers had been plucked out. In the gaps between the feathers, the veins of the membrane pulsed. He slowly raised his head and locked his eyes with mine. Another memory entered my head. Threll's grandson knelt on the floor in tears. "What have you done to me?" Shazekiel looked down at him from the wall. "I've given you everything you ever wanted. You've cursed me." Shazekiel's voice brought me out of the dream. "You found me, Vadim." He was smiling now, the same smile from my dream. "Are you in pain?" I asked him. I've suffered worse. Now, are you going to save me? Take me to see Reed? How do you know about Reed? I know everything that happens next. Everything that Reed wants from me. But what do you want, Vadim? I don't want anything from you. You want to know who betrayed you. I'll tell you if you free me. I promise I won't hurt you. So I was betrayed then. I knew it. I'd always wanted the name. I'd always wanted the truth. I picked up the bolt cutter and cut the steel bolts. Shazekiel stepped forward from the wall. The wires stretched and then began snapping. Shazekiel leaned forward, bringing his face toward mine. It was Alexei, he told me. Of course. It had always been so obvious. He'd made the mistake, not me. He must have hacked that crypto exchange, even after I warned him not to. And then gotten caught, just like I'd warned him he would. To save himself, he'd traded my life for his. All the tears, all the times he visited me in prison, trying to cheer me up. I laughed. I'd make sure I paid him back. Before I died, I'd make sure he suffered just like I had. Shazekiel lifted me off the ground. What are you doing? I yelled. His mouth widened, his jaw unhinged with the crack of splitting bone. Then the lower half dropped to his chest. Inside his widening mouth, I saw a cave of pale, ribbed flesh. Stop! He swallowed me whole, like a snake devouring a rat. My eyes filled with darkness. Knives stabbed into my shoulder blades. The pain spread down my spine. My veins squirmed like worms against my muscles. I began bleeding from every part of my body. Soon my clothes were soaked with blood. Again and again, my veins emptied and then soaked up fresh blood. I screamed in agony, begging Shazekiel to make the torture stop. I don't know how long it went on for, hours or days, but then I woke up on the floor. Black blood dripped from my mouth. My clothes were soaked with black blood too. My body ached. Shazekiel hovered over me, the same black blood dripping from his mouth. What did you do to me? I asked. He turned and walked down the hallway. Where are you going? I yelled. I ran after him, but I became dizzy. I leaned against the wall to steady myself. Outside, I found Shazekiel in the back of the van, waiting for me. Take me to Reed now, he said. I called Reed and asked him where he wanted me to go. Reed gave me the address for a warehouse in Northern California. I drove all night, 15 hours, only stopping for gas. I felt relieved to be done with Reed and with chasing after missing angels. I got back to work on other projects, but then the changes started, slowly at first. The first few weeks, my muscles and bones felt sore, but I blamed the soreness on stress and lack of sleep. But then I began growing. My shoulders had widened, my legs and arms lengthened. My hands and feet became longer and thinner. Soon, my clothes didn't fit anymore. I bought a tape measure and began measuring myself every morning. I grew from 6'1" to 6'3". No matter how much I ate, I was horribly hungry. I couldn't eat cooked food either. Even the smell of it made me gag. All I could eat was raw meat. Then, 3 months after whatever Shazekiel did to me, wings began to grow from my back. They were small at first, but as they grew in size, they became difficult to hide under my jacket. I thought about calling Jose's daughter, but I don't know what I would tell her. That I'd found the angel and freed him, but then he'd made me an angel too? Curse me just like he had cursed Threll? I kept trying to call Reed. I wanted to tell him what was happening to me. I wanted to warn him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. Then I saw Reed on TV, talking to a reporter. He looked different than he had before. He looked healthy and strong now. All his hair had grown back. He told the reporter he'd just launched a new genetics company. He'd taken an interest in genome editing technology like CRISPR. He was going to use his fortune to fund research that would explore how to unlock the true potential of human DNA. He would continue Threll's work on Project Nephilim. I went to the bathroom and took off my shirt. I barely recognized myself anymore. My ribs pressed through my skin. My flesh had become pale white. And the wings on my back, I opened them and let them fill the bathroom. Then I closed them again, and I put my shirt back on. I looked at my reflection one last time, and I wondered what I was becoming. Alright, so my take on that one, if you meet a fallen angel and he decides that he's gonna put you in his mouth for a couple days and turn you into a fallen angel, it's not gonna go great for you. No, that was a really creepy story in my opinion. I feel like that one would make like a really good book or a movie. This next one is also from r/no sleep from user Tiara MBC. I used to work as a mortician, and there's something funeral homes don't tell you. I quit my job as a mortician a few years ago, and all the people who knew me are now dead. So I think it's a good time to tell you a very well-kept secret. But before I go into the main story, let me tell you why I became a mortician in the first place. My grandpa's body was found inside his house, dead. It was presumed he had died 2 days before, and that had been how long since he hadn't answered the phone. My mother was in charge of the funeral arrangements, and per my grandpa's request, the viewing would be in his house. He also had requested that he not be embalmed, for he found it unnatural. And so the family gathered in his house, full of flowers to cover the stench of death. We all cried and wished we had just a little more time with him. The thing is, our wish came true much too quickly. As one of my aunts approached his body, she screamed and ran out of the house. When we all turned to the direction of my grandpa's body, he was sitting up. His gaze was distant, undisturbed by the hysteria his resurrection had caused. Doctors explained to us that he could be a rare case of someone with Lazarus syndrome. Besides that, there wasn't any other explanation. He didn't live long after this incident. He would eat, sleep, and sometimes smile, but he never spoke again. It felt as if my grandpa had lost all that made him, well, into him. By his second death, my mother ignored his previous wishes and had him embalmed. Some family members joked that we should put a bell on his tomb just in case he woke up again. But I'm not sure how much of it was an actual joke. His first and second death made me curious about what happens after. Was there an afterlife? Did we reincarnate? Or did we just rot away into nothingness? The whole religious aspect of it bored me, but the process of death and how the body is handled after drew me in. The turnover rate for morticians is rather high, so I felt especially proud when I obtained my bachelor's degree and was quickly accepted into an internship. I was stupid. I thought I was better than all those people who quit as soon as they realized a dead body is more than just a piece of meat. Now I realized they were the smart ones for leaving and finding any other profession in the world. At the beginning of my internship, there were 6 of us. We were given some of the worst bodies to work with in order to weed out even more people. I almost quit when I had to reconstruct the face of a 3-year-old girl who had been stabbed multiple times by her father. The mother still went with a closed casket funeral, but she thanked us for making her baby's face whole once more. By the end of the first year of internship, only 2 of us were left. The funeral director called us into his office saying he needed to talk with us. Congratulations on completing your first year of internship. The funeral director, Nave, sounded anything but happy. Thank you, Gia and I said in unison. He didn't even look at us. He flipped through some paperwork and files. We just sat there unsure of what to do other than to stare at each other. Outside the office, we could hear the creaky wheels of a gurney as someone transferred a fresh body into the fridges. I kind of hoped Nave would let us out soon. Being inside the office was much more nerve-wracking than trying to find what body part belonged where after someone had fallen into a wood chipper. I need you both to stay overnight. Make the necessary arrangements. Today you will figure out why people don't stay in the job. Now go. Nave dismissed us as he handed us some papers. And please make sure to sign all the paperwork. Gia made us both the elixir of the gods, coffee, to prepare us for the night. The paperwork made no sense. Most of it was legal jargon related to death and keeping confidentiality. Whatever happened tonight, we couldn't speak of to anyone outside of the people who worked here. What could be so bad we have to sign so many papers? Gia asked. I have no idea, but I swear I just signed a paper giving the company rights to my soul, I joked. You still had one? Gia laughed. We finished our lunch of coffee and headed back to the prep room. Our laughter quickly died as Nave stood by 4 corpses ready for us to dig into. He took the papers from us, and his face somehow became more somber as he realized we weren't backing out. "This is your last chance to quit. There's no shame on it." Nave looked directly at us. "I'm staying." My voice faltered, but I tried to look confident. "Me too." Gia's voice trembled. He looked at us with pain in his eyes. At the time I was confused, but again, I wished I had taken the opportunity and left. But no, my pride kept me there, trying to prove a point that didn't even exist. "Diana, take the 2 bodies to the right. Gia, get the 2 bodies on the left," Nave instructed. We quickly took our positions, somewhat confused on why we were working on 2 bodies each at a time. Their charts and all the sanitizing utensils were missing too. Gia and I looked at each other confused. "Now, take their pulses," Nave instructed. "What?" I looked at him confused. "Please do as I say, and once you do, come sit with me. We'll have a talk," Nave said as he sat on one empty chair pointed towards the bodies. Gia and I looked at each other and reluctantly went to do as told. I grabbed the wrist of a slim woman who looked to be in her 30s. A shiver ran through my body as the coldness of death touched my warm fingers. I was careful to not damage the skin as I pressed down to feel for a heartbeat, and there was nothing. I let out a sigh of relief that I didn't know I had been holding on to. For the next body, I checked for a pulse from his neck, as both of his wrists had been damaged by some kind of knife. As I pressed down into his neck, I thought for a second that I felt a heartbeat. I backed away, knowing that was impossible. The rigidity of the body had started to go away as the muscles decomposed, but rigor mortis had already stiffened the body, suggesting he had been dead for at least a day or 2. Nave looked at me, his eyes hiding something as he waved at me to go back to the body. I took a deep breath, trying to keep paranoia at bay. I didn't allow my mind to wander much as I pressed my hand into the corpse's neck once more. There was nothing. I almost laughed at myself for freaking out. I had probably felt my own pulse when I touched his neck. Once done, Gia and I went to sit next to Nave, unsure of what to expect. For sure it wasn't what he said next. "Have you heard how Jesus came back to life 3 days after he was crucified?" Nave started. We didn't respond. "Sorry, I'm just not sure how to explain this. It's my first time explaining it to anyone." He took a pause. Gia and I looked at each other, probably thinking the same thing. Had Nave lost his mind? Should we get out of here while we still could? "Diana, Gia, tonight will either be a rather eventful night or pretty silent. Let's hope for the second, and that you just think I lost it." Nave laughed humorlessly. The hours passed, and we just sat there. Occasionally, I looked at my phone to doomscroll. Gia made us all a batch of coffee to make the sand of sleep fall from our eyes. The silence was bothering me, but when I tried to put on headphones, Nave made me take them off. Then there was a sound. Was that a groan? I looked at the bodies in front of us, and then at Nave. Nave looked intensely at the bodies. His eyes darted from one body to the next. I trembled, unsure of what was going on. And then another groan. Nave reached down under his chair into a bag I hadn't noticed before. He handed us each a knife and held one himself. "Why do we—" Gia stopped. The man I had felt a pulse from earlier that night was not sitting up. He stared directly at us, but didn't look at us. His gaze seemed to travel somewhere else. I'd seen this before, many years ago with my grandpa. My bladder wanted to give out at that moment. This couldn't possibly be happening. "You two, stab that man in the heart," Nave ordered us. "I'm not going to kill him," I protested. "Why is he alive?" Gia sobbed. "He isn't alive, or not in the way you're thinking about. Now put him to rest." Nave's voice wavered as he tried to stay calm. I'm not sure why I trusted him, but I started to walk towards the man that I knew had been dead just a few hours ago. As I approached, the man looked at me and gave the smallest smile. He then turned his gaze once more into whatever he was looking at and ignored me. Gia attempted to approach, but nausea overtook, and she ran towards the nearest trash bin to throw up. In all the time I had known Gia, she had never thrown up. She could easily have a meal in front of a fully open corpse. My hands trembled as I tried to place a knife where the heart was located. My own nausea begged for me to run to the nearest trash bin. Instead, I swallowed it, trying to ignore the acidic aftertaste. I took a deep breath and steadied my hands, ready to plunge the knife into his heart. As the first piece of skin broke, the man turned his head towards me with impossible speed and grabbed my arm. I screamed as I tried to pull my arm away. As the man's expression turned into anger, he tried to bite my arm, but I pushed his head away with my other arm. Gia and Nave ran towards me. Gia attempted to free my arm from his grip. I cried and begged the dead man to let go. Nave somehow maneuvered the knife between the 3 tangled bodies and stabbed the man right through the heart. The man let go of my arm and slowly fell back into the gurney, leaving a bloody mess behind. I'm so sorry you had to experience this, but there was no other way. If I had tried to explain this, you wouldn't have believed me. Nave started to crumble. After this, I'm honestly not sure why I stayed. Nave explained to us that some people would come back on the 3rd day, and if Jesus had been real, then that was probably what had happened to him too. Some returned peaceful, others would attack immediately. One thing was for sure, they weren't the same person they had been before death. And the best way to prevent this resurrection? Freezing and embalming the bodies. Our job was to prevent the dead from coming back, not prepare the bodies for family to view. We were given a choice, to stay at work or quit. We would be helped to find a new job if we chose to quit. The only thing we couldn't do was talk about what happened that night. The only ones who knew the secret were other morticians, and it was better it stayed that way. Both of us decided to stay. As terrified as I was about what had happened, I was also morbidly curious. At last, I was getting answers to what happens after death. Nave died a few years later. He took his own life, not being able to handle the pressure of the secret. I took over his position and trained new morticians. Gia was murdered by the husband of a woman whom he claimed Gia had killed when she woke up again. Now here I am, no longer in the business, but still burdened with the knowledge. I've seen loved ones go, and I have made sure they stay that way. Do what you want with this knowledge, but I do warn you, they won't come back the same. Let the dead people rest. This is really one of those stories that just sounds way too real. If anyone viewing this video is by chance a mortician or works in a morgue, please enlighten me. Let us all know if this is real. Anyways, that's all the Minecraft and creepy Reddit stories I have for you today. If you liked the video, drop a like and subscribe. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Thanks for watching.